Welcome to Not What I Thought. I'm Erika.
I'm Yolanda.
And I'm Becca. We're therapists, entrepreneurs, and perfectly imperfect humans.
We first met during a business owner retreat where we became fast friends because we're not afraid to be real and ask the hard questions about life. What we thought it would be like, how messy it actually is, and the courage it takes to create the life we want.
We continue to build our friendship and personal growth through our own retreats. We find the deepest connection in sharing our struggles and finding what we have in common rather than what divides us.
We're breaking down hard topics on our podcast and together have conversations about what it takes to find real talk, real support, and real rest for professional women. We're glad you're here. Join us on your favorite podcast platform.
All right. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about how I was 10 years into my career as a therapist before I realized that I was an empath. So it's pretty intriguing to figure out how I was going to manage my sessions moving forward, taking care of myself, even teaching interns or supervisees how to take care of themselves in session or how to respond to certain things. Really changed my view on, what was happening inside of me during sessions. So
what did you think that it was before you had this realization?
Before even that question,
okay.
Yeah. Erika, can you tell us what an empath is?
I can. So
yes, help us understand, because you were 10 years into doing this professionally.
Yeah. So a lot of it is about being, I guess, similar to a highly sensitive person. Maybe we'll talk about that in another episode. But it's really people who are very intuitive. They kind of understand easily other people's emotions, feelings, thoughts. You can often get overwhelmed if there's too much stimulus, because you also are taking in kind of all of those things into your own body. People may say you're too sensitive. You're usually caring and you so deeply care about other people that it's really hard for you to release all of that from inside of your own body.
Like, what did you think was going on before you had this realization about being an empath?
Well, I guess how this came up was in the business coaching program where we all met, in which I was having trouble like disconnecting from some of my sessions. And so I was actually having trouble doing other tasks because I was like, oh, this is still bothering me, or like, this is, my back is still hurting. I know it's tied to this. So it was more of a, I need you, business coach, please, to tell me how to do this better. Like, what other skills do I need to know and learn and master so that I can be better? So I don't think I really even gave it much thought. Just like, this is normal. This happens to everybody. And you're just not doing it good enough. You're just not coping good enough.
Yeah.
And the part that's normal and happens to everybody was that like difficulty disconnecting from your sessions or feeling the stuff in your body. And you just didn't even know that was a thing.
Right. Like, you have a certain session and this one part of my back will like burn, like feels like fire. I'm like, oh yeah, that's everybody. Everybody feels that way. And no, not everybody.
Ooh.
So, I mean, I think there's advantages to it, certainly, right? Like, I think it actually helps a lot of therapists be good at their jobs, because the client comes in, and I think most therapists probably already understand there's something happening, right? Like, oh, there's some tension or something. But I think an empath can quickly dive into that emotion a little bit more specifically. And ask the questions to like really go there, and pull that out.
It is like hardwired right into you, right? You know exactly what you're going for.
Yeah, you're kind of fishing, right, for the thing I already know in my body. My husband says it's unfair because I already know what he's feeling before he knows what he's feeling.
Well, it's interesting because I think what I hear you saying, Erika, is like you saw the benefits of it. Like, before you had this word to wrap around it, you knew like the superpower side of being an empath.
Right.
But you didn't tie like the kryptonite side of the coin. You didn't make this connection, like the impact that it takes on you.
Yeah. That's why this is sitting with me for 3 hours, I'm
Ooh.
curious if either of you like has a similar experience, or even just how you learn to process things in your sessions.
I think like I have always known that I feel things very deeply. Um, Even from being like a young child, like just feeling it so intensely, and sitting with friends and hearing their stories and feeling like having that big body somatic emotional response inside me. And I think you mentioned this, Erica, but that was linked for me growing up to being too sensitive, being too much, too emotional, so I really over time came to pathologize like that part of me. Like there's something wrong with me that I feel these things in this way, to this depth. I have felt similarly to you. Like I can recognize how it's beneficial as a therapist, and in spending time with clients, and even just connecting with people that I care about. And it's taken me a long time to recognize the cost that it comes at, and to build some build some things around that side of things where I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, I think for me, I also have always been very observant and sensitive. Um, and I was raised in a family and environment that maybe didn't recognize that. And I don't even mean to say that as a negative, just like if my parents were not as sensitive as me, they would have no idea that I'm picking up on stuff that they're not seeing because they're not seeing it. Right. But that the end result is that I felt I don't even want to say other, that feels too strong, but like I I think constantly doubted the things that I was picking up, right? Like, am I crazy to think this? Um, or a little bit of being too much, right? Because something would hit me and I would feel it so deeply, and the other people around me are like, "What? Like this isn't a big deal." Um, and like, yes, this is part of what makes me great at my job, as you all know. It's that, ability to kind of sense into something and to pick up on what someone is maybe feeling but not saying yet, and to, draw that out. And yeah, it can be, I think it's particularly draining for me, maybe more than other folks, to be around people who have like bad energy or who aren't being completely honest and straightforward. Right. I've seen that in some friend relationships that, maybe there's a friend who I know, I'm like, you're not telling us the whole story. Nope, there's more to what's happening here. Like, I know there's something and you're not saying it. And the other friends seem to be fine, just like, yeah, but they're fun at other times. And so that's, no big deal. And I have it's harder for me to just sort of brush that off, because I'm like, but I'm carrying this thing that I know that there is a thing that's not being spoken here. And it's harder for me to just sit with that and be okay with it, which maybe, I don't know, maybe that makes me seem like I'm a little more dramatic, or I'm like reading things in that aren't there. And I think that there might have been a time that I believed that narrative, that I'm reading stuff into a situation that's not there. And then if it's not fucking over and over and over again, that I come to find out that my read on it was right. Right? I was intuiting something. I was feeling something, picking up something that wasn't being spoken. And I think my work lately has been about learning to trust that stuff. Like I'm picking up on something here and trusting that, instead of automatically gaslighting myself and saying, no, it can't be that. I'm reading things that aren't there or whatever, because it's just happened too many times that it turns out that I was picking up on something. I was right about it.
Can I say, I call it being the canary in the coal mine.
Mm-hmm. I want to know more about that.
Yeah. And so like historically, when we did go into when coal miners did go into coal mines, they'd have a canary in a cage, and they would take this canary into the depths of the coal mine, and the canary was the first indication that there was a lack of oxygen, and then the canary would like fall over. So it's like the canary is picking up this sensing into like there's not enough oxygen here. And it
This
was
is
the
dangerous.
right, yes, and it was the canary's job to notify, like, hey, something's happening here. And I think those of us who and we kind of it tends to be kind of multifaceted. I think those of us who are empaths, to Erica's point, tend to have have kind of be highly sensitive, kind of tend to be introvert, like it kind of all tends to weave together. But to your point, Becca, I mean, the number of times that I've doubted myself and questioned myself, and like you mentioned, gaslit myself from this context of like being too much or.
Well, I'm actually fascinated to hear both of you describe the same process, but it looks different for the two of you, because nobody's ever told me I'm too sensitive or dramatic, because I internalize all the things, and like, but I have like the exact same process where it's like, no, this isn't right. Like something's not happening here. And I'm like probably logical to a fault. So I can also see the path of like, that doesn't make sense. Like you're saying this, but this other thing happened. No, it doesn't add up for me. And then I just hold all of that on the inside. And, I guess if our audience were to think about if they have a similar process, like a lot of it comes down to family of origin kind of stuff, right? And things that we have to learn how to work our way through.
I definitely grew up in a home where you had to, like, my spidey senses are highly cultivated, highly skilled and highly practiced, right? You learn to pick up on things before they actually happen.
To notice the really subtle shifts in the turn of phrase, in someone's mood, in the tone of voice, because like that could portend a future calamity. And so you learn to be very attuned to the little things.
Even a sigh, to this day, I have to like modulate myself through a sigh. There's a sign. It's okay.
If that meant something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for other highly sensitive or empathic people, well, maybe I should check this. Something that I have been learning recently is my tendency to not just notice other people's emotions, but to like pick them up and carry them as my own. And so I'm feeling something and it's a good stop, or it's a good check to like stop and ask, is this even my feeling? If I have some anxiety, if I have some fear, if I have some dread, whatever it is, like, is this actually mine? Or have I just somehow like felt it from someone else and now I'm carrying it and I'm trying to make a story about why do I feel this way? And maybe it's not even my worry, or maybe it's not even my anger. I'm feeling it like on behalf of someone else. Right?
Yeah. And for me, then a need to like fix whatever that thing is, or start thinking about how I can fix what that thing is.
Right. And then if you can notice, oh, this isn't actually, I've picked up someone else's stuff, then maybe I don't have to solve it. I don't have to fix it. I can just give it back to them. It's not mine. Be a lot of alleviation of some stress in that.
Or at least for me to remind myself, like, I have a protective psychological boundary. That is like, that emotion is not me. But I do have to very actively, like I mentioned with the sigh, and to your point, Becca, I have to actively remind myself, like, that is not me. That is not mine to carry. It's not mine to fix. Recently, I've been leaning into very much like detachment period, like detachment from these things that aren't mine to and it starts with that, like, ooh, something just landed in my body, and being a little bit more mindful about that. And so in that landing in my body is the reminder for me to check in, like, is this mine? And if not, let me put that boundary into place and then do what I need to do to like release whatever just came in. Yeah, Erika, I think it's interesting because how many massages have I gone into and they're like, what do you do for a living? Erika's nodding. I'm sure I'm not the only one who,
happens every time.
and like flat out, you are carrying the weight of the world on your shoulder. And I'm like, I know.
And I think even to that, because I had a massage therapist a while back tell me that some of the knots and other things that we build up in our fascia and muscles is like a, protective measure, just the same as I guess our other defenses, right? But I don't know, that's what I was thinking too. A lot of this does come from our childhood or family of origin or some personality, I think too. But, looking forward now as an adult, we can actually advocate for ourselves and we don't need all of that protection all the time. Like we can place good boundaries and we can express our own needs to other people. And so we don't need to carry that as much as we do. Like, could we turn some of those things that are overwhelming about being an empath or highly sensitive person into purely like using that for benefit of ourselves and others in relationships?
How do you do that? How have you figured that out?
Yes, I figured it out 100%.
Yeah, all of this. You've been helping out on us.
No, I wish that I had figured it all out, right? I think I'm certainly better at it. I do a similar exercise you were describing, Yolanda. Terry Real has a video where he talks about like a glass dome kind of over yourself, so you can see like what's coming in, and then you can choose like if you're going to open the door or not, right? And also you can decide about feedback that you're getting to yourself. Is that true really or not? If I'm being actually honest with myself, like, is that true or not? So I can decide what I'm gonna let in and what needs to just kind of be on the outside of that. Whereas I can still observe it, like it's still there. I can see it, but I don't have to bring it into my own bubble.
I've been talking about this a lot with my kids because I have kids who are very empathic and sensitive. And the metaphor that we use is boxes. And it came from some early childhood work that I was doing where I realized I had taken on the role as a kid of like picking up other people's boxes. So here's their boxes of crap that they don't want to deal with. And I think that I'm being helpful by like, let me carry this for you. And what I needed was probably some adult to step in and go, oh, baby, that is too much for you. Let me take that box. That one's too heavy for you. But I just thought that I was being helpful. And so I developed this pattern of like picking up and carrying other people's stuff. So with my kids, that's the metaphor that we use is boxes. And with my, little one, especially if other people in the family have some kind of a disagreement or an argument or whatever, she absorbs all of the feelings and goes internal and holds on to it. And so I'll ask her, like, did you pick up any boxes? Like, yeah. When that thing happened, I picked up boxes of other people's feelings. And then we talk about strategies for how she can like set them down and not have to carry the stuff that isn't hers. That's been a helpful visual. It's like, yeah, this thing happened and it actually wasn't about you. It was between your sister and, one of the parents got into a disagreement, and that's not about you at all. You don't have to carry that. You don't have to pick that up. Those aren't your boxes. And then with my older daughter, we've had some interesting conversations because she's a little more, can understand some more nuance on like, yeah, we don't have to pick up other people's boxes. And also to notice what happens in relationships, because there are some relationships or friendships where you have a person who's a dumper and they come to you over and over again and go, here's this heavy box. And they give it to you and walk away and you're left with the burden of it. And how is that different? Because we don't want to say never be there for your friends, right? But you may have other relationships where a friend sits down with you and says, hey, I have a heavy box. Can you help me with it? And we can open the box with them and look together at what's there. And maybe for a short time, we are holding the other side of the box for them. And maybe after sorting through all the heavy stuff, we get to leave some of it behind. But that person, when they leave, they take their box with them, right? They don't just dump it on you for you to handle. And you want to watch what kind of friends you have where if you say, I have a heavy box, can you work, that they'll talk to you and maybe you feel lighter when you walk away, right? So this metaphor has been really helpful for us to be able to talk about mutuality in friendships and what it looks like to be able to provide support to people. Because I also don't want the message to be never go to anyone with your problems because they don't deserve your boxes. Right?
I love that.
I love that too. That's really cool.
I'm also thinking that even for me, even with knowing like the boxes and, in school, I would hear the word permeable heart. So like allow it to, move through you and all of that stuff. And I'm like, well, that's great. Only what about the stuff that still is like there? I envision this permeable heart that has this filter, but there's still the stuff that gets stuck in the filter, like, And like it just happens, even with the protected boundary, even with the boxes. And so for me, it's been like, I have to be honest with myself, because I think that for me, there has been some shame around, oh, you're supposed to be like this ultimate caring person, but it doesn't take a toll on you, right? But like that's the sign of a truly, quote unquote, truly good therapist, so that you can carry everybody's stuff, and especially with trauma, right? You can work with everybody's trauma, and then it just like there's nothing that gets stuck in the filter. So it's being honest with myself that, yeah, sometimes stuff still does build up in the filter, and like, what's the best way for me to clear out the filter, right? So, I have a highly sensitive nervous system. That's, part of being an empath, part of being highly sensitive person. So I really have protective boundaries around what I allow in. Like, I don't watch the news, very careful about shows and like things that I read. For me, like journaling is very helpful to kind of clear out some of that stuff that still gets stuck in the filter. And then like completing the stress cycle and like moving my body in ways that helps to release that. My favorite, I call it my spiritual gangster workout, where I will get on the bike and kind of like create a little bit of heat and flush things out, and then go straight to the yoga mat and like do a very introspective kind of yoga yoga experience. And that there are usually tears that go along with those. But for me, that is a really, like, I've come to understand like those are necessities for me, and there's nothing bad or wrong about me for needing to step into those things.
I appreciate that acknowledgement that sometimes stuff still does get stuck in the filter, and there's like no amount of being perfect that means that you're gonna like not be affected. Because there's a certain amount of just regular movement and exercise that's good for me, and then there's sometimes where it's like I need to go and be on a trail for hours and be doing something hard. And I think there's something about like the combination of that being in nature and how grounding and regulating it is to be in nature, and also not just movement in that my body is like spinning on a stationary bike, but like I am actually going somewhere. And I imagine myself like that I left the stuff there. I went out and I dropped it, and I come back feeling lighter. And maybe that's just that it's like an all-day workout. I don't know. Because I would never do yoga for 5 or 8 or 10 hours, but I do a hike that long.
Becca, that one of my first experiences of having this better understanding about this part of this was actually I was on a personal retreat and took a hike, and literally had stones that I had picked up and that I kind of placed throughout the hike. And I think ultimately that would be my first preference, but we live in Florida and there's not a lot of beautiful hiking here. So I do what I can.
Yes.
How about for you, Erika?
I definitely do the movement piece. I think that's super helpful, but I think I've been experimenting more with some restorative yoga. So, which includes, partially deep breathing, but also I feel like part of how things manifest in me is just like an over processing. My body's over processing, my mind is over processing. Like I just can't stop that or slow it down. And so that 30-minute class helps me to just, okay, I'm going to be in this pose for like 7 minutes, which sounds like an eternity. I'm like, how am I going to sit there for this long? But over time, it's become easier and it starts to feel really good. And I notice a lot of the instructors for those classes, they say, you can totally release because you can just trust that the ground is beneath you, right? Like the ground is beneath you, holding you up. And that idea was like alarming to me at first, I guess. Like I was like, no, it's not. And then, oh, yes, it is. So it's also a practice, I think, in being able to trust that, like, I don't have to have everything inside of me, that I can like lean on another thing.
Another thing I would add when I get to a point of overwhelm with my sensitivity
is that I sometimes need to go to a place of no more input,
Mm.
like between reading something or watching something or all of the people that I talk to or whatever. It's like I have all of this information input, and then I need to almost detox from that. So maybe that's the journal, that's the hike, but not, I don't listen to music. I don't listen to podcasts. I'm not listening to an audiobook. It's like, I need to do something that lets me get stuff out because I've had too much input and like my container is strained.
So Erika, what did you think about this being an empath? What did you used to think about it?
Well, I definitely thought before I, just wasn't working hard enough on my boundaries or like separating myself enough from this work or from things happening in other relationships. Like that was just on me and I wasn't doing it right. And so now I think that, I realize like there's nothing wrong with me, and that somatic information, it can be a lot to hold, but it's giving me data. So if I could just take what I need from it and then figure out how to move the rest of it around or through, then that's good and it's helpful.
How about you, Becca? What does your heart know?
My heart knows that it's okay that I'm sensitive. And I want to value and protect this quality instead of trying to squash it out of myself. I want to honor what that is and what it brings. How about you, Yolanda?
My heart knows that this is nothing to be shameful about, that being an empath is actually a superpower and serves an important purpose in the world. As canaries.
Yes. Canary.
As long as we're taking good care of ourselves through it.
Right. And I think it really helps when we have people around us who can see that and go, oh no, we should listen to them.
Mm.
Like you pay attention to the canary, that's why they're there.
And to have a community that understands this and is like, synthesize the information.
And shared language, right? So now we'll know, we can say, are you holding somebody else's box?
That's it's such a useful shorthand. Then they can, my kid can come in and be like, I have boxes. Like, oh, I know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
Right?
I love you guys.
I love you too.
Love you.